How are you?
We're back. We're back. My name's James Taylor, keynote speaker on creativity, innovation, and artificial intelligence.
Maria Franzoni, a recovering Speaker Bureau owner, now working with speakers to help them grow their speaking businesses. I'm just about recovered. James, you are looking very different. What's going on?
It's all your fault, Maria. It's all your fault. We had a wonderful guest on the show, probably towards the start of actually doing this show, Speaking Business TV, Kay Korsh. She is a stylist, and this is one of the outfits. So I'm posing on one of the outfits. So if you're watching, thank you. She's probably going to message me after this saying, total black, and it doesn't work. It doesn't work. So, but you've had some great advice from her.
Where's the handkerchief?
I'm switching things up for 2022.
Yes, I'm wearing a colour she's approved of.
Okay.
And you see, with this, she didn't like the neckline. I have to wear these necklines like this, you see, apparently. All right up to my, hide basically as much skin as possible at my age. And so I've got this underneath. And so, so I think I'll be okay. So we're all right. Okay, right. What are we doing today, apart from looking fabulous?
Well, before we came on live, we were talking about what animals we are. So supposedly, Maria, you are a lion, Leone with a hair, and I think it's an elephant with dolphin tendencies. So I'm not sure where that ends up. But our guest today, some of this is going to make sense when you meet our wonderful guest today. Entertaining and unreservedly direct, our guest isn't just a motivational speaker. He is a company turnaround specialist, driving everyone from CEOs to school children to ignite excitement and action in their lives. For more than 20 years, he has been on his quest to make you the best by sharing his techniques and tools to break through the boundaries we've put up around us. His always animated and interactive presentations have inspired thousands of FTSE 100 and Fortune 500 delegates, school children, charities, even prison inmates in groups of 5 to 5,000 and all over the world, into taking positive strides in their work and personal lives. No longer living the dress rehearsal of their life, his words whip up listeners into action, energized and passionate. Please welcome to the show, Nigel Risner.
What a welcome. What a welcome. What a welcome.
Well,
no, you've got to live up to that now. That was quite an introduction there, James. Thank you for that.
Wow. I think you need to be an MC more than a speaker with that introduction.
He's good, isn't he?
Secondary life.
Yeah, he carries me through this program. Nigel, it's lovely to see you. I'd like to know how long you've been speaking, because I've been in the industry for a while, and I think you've been there all the way through.
So I did my very first speech in September 1997.
Ah, wow, a little bit longer than me, because I started April 1998. So yeah, you have been around throughout my speaking industry career.
And we're both looking so young, we could be the parents of James here.
Oh, goodness gracious. Oh, what I don't like about StreamYard is that I don't have the Zoom. In Zoom, you have this filter where you can put it straight to the, maximum and have instant Botox. You don't on this. But anyway, so yes, you've been around a while then, shall we say. So tell us, before we go into more depth, what is your speaking business model? What does it consist of?
So I'm slightly lucky that I have 3 parts to my business. I specialize in chief exec groups. And my business was a bit weird, because I started my business doing chief exec groups in November 1997 by pure luck, because my next door neighbor, when I was 2, ran the Academy for Chief Execs. And my father introduced me at a party and said, I don't know what my son does, and I don't really know what you do, but you two should meet. So I did the CEO group nearly by mistake, having never really spoken to large groups before. And within minutes, I then got involved in 40 groups, then got involved with Vistage, which now owns the Academy for Chief Execs, then got involved with YPO, Young Presidents Organization, EO, Entrepreneurs Organization, Foot Down, ACOSVO, which is the Academy for Chief Execs for Non-Voluntary Organizations. I mean, it went ballistic within about a year and a half, and I did 500 CEO groups, literally around Europe and the world, without really having a speaking business. But what happened was, every group that I did, the CEO would say, you need to come into my company. So I didn't do keynote speaking for about 3 years. I did CEO groups, companies, and then, do you remember the Institute of Sales and Marketing Management?
Yes, very well.
you had James is too young for this. He's about 11 at this point. But you used to have these regional events in all up and down the country where you'd have 40 or 50 people. But the pinnacle was the Institute of Sales and Marketing Management had a conference in the IIC in Birmingham with like 2,000 people.
I've been.
Yep. And I happened to meet Patrick Joyner at an event in Brentwood. I mean, I can remember so many of these specific events. And he then invited me to their main stage. Now, I'd never done a 20-minute keynote. I mean, 20-minute keynote compared to a 3-hour training session is unbelievably hard. And most speakers make the mistake of thinking a trainer can be a keynote speaker and vice versa. A keynote speaker can be a trainer. It's totally different skills. Fortunately, I nailed the event, but that was a bit of luck because subsequently it took me a bit of time to learn how to be a keynote speaker. It needs a totally different skill to nail a 40-minute speech compared to a 2-hour, 3-hour training. And if you think about someone like Michael McIntyre or any of the comedians that do their show on Wembley, they do like 100 practice shows to nail their material so they really fine-tune every story. Most keynote speakers, me included, and I'm sure James will know about this, that you practice the odd story and then hope you can fit it in somewhere, and then you practice a bit of it somewhere where a client's paying you. Well, you need to be really careful because you're getting paid to be your phenomenalness, and then you want to add in a story. Well, it's really hard just to add in a story if you don't do it live, because then you don't get the feedback, if that makes sense. So my business is CEO groups, keynote speaking through fantastic agents like yourselves, and when you had your speaker bureau business, and then my existing clients who I've now been working with for nearly 24 years, and I coach about 10 to 12 CEOs every month, and half of them come to my house and half of them we meet in fantastic restaurants all over the London. So then I've got my books, which is a whole side. And now I'm going to give you a new side that we have a license for my animal model. So we have licensed zookeepers in 7 different countries that are using my material, that pay a license to use the material, and I train them. So that's a quick answer, or a long answer to a short answer question.
James, I'm sure you want to dig
I'm
deeper there. You
mentioned like this, the Vistage group. I've never spoken to any of the kind of Vistage groups. A good friend, you probably know him, David Avrin. You know, he does lots of these Vistage groups in the United States. And he kind of explained a little bit about those kind of CEO groupings. They're a little bit different. They're long, and they're almost like that kind of training, kind of workshop style rather than the keynote, as you say. You became Speaker of the Year. And kind of working with Vistage, YPO. Talk us through, what does that engagement model look like? What do you have to be really, really good at in order to engage that type of audience? Okay,
so it's a brilliant question, because imagine you've got 15 Marias in a room. Okay, visualize
Nightmare.
You know Maria. You've got 15 Marias in a room of non-competing companies. All 15 think they know more than the speaker.
Mm-hmm. That's me, yeah.
And you've got to entertain them for anything between 2 to 4 hours by giving them information which they're going to try and plagiarize back to their companies. So they want some instant nowness, as I call it. They want some new knowledge. So imagine, James, I came on here to teach you the SMART method for goal setting. Well, obviously, you've probably heard it. Maria's definitely heard it 20,000 times. So I have a SMART method for goal setting, but it's different to everyone else's. And I've adapted it to the current world. And I've now gone smarter. So I've added 2 extra letters at the end. So it needs to be enjoyable and rewarding. And then I'll ask people how they maintain their relationships with their team. Then we'll do some exercises. But what you're really trying to do with a Vistage group is they've given up a lot of their time. And if you visualize 12 CEOs of businesses between 40 and 4,000 staff have allocated 4 hours to a speaker, they want knowledge and nuggets they can use there and then. Mm-hmm. So you might be, James, talking about the internet, the economy, Bitcoin. You might be talking about something esoteric in one way. You've got to think, how are they going to use it? Because otherwise they could just read that stuff online. They need to feel and experience something. And too many speakers are desperate for acknowledgement and bookings now. The advantage of being Speaker of the Year from the Academy and Chief Execs, foot down, Vistage, I don't need their approval. I've got the awards on my wall. I'm lucky on that sense. I've got the trophies. So my job is not to impress anymore, is to give them value so they invite me back to their companies. And too many speakers, and Maria, you'll know that, they're looking for glory points instead of long-term value. When we all started, we wanted these fantastic testimonials. Testimonials don't pay your mortgage, and I've tried giving testimonials to Waitrose, and they don't accept it as payment. What they do accept as payment is rebookings and cash in the bank. So speakers have got to realize if you give value, long-term value, and tips they can use immediately, there's a chance of getting rebooked.
So if we think about like a customer value proposition, any companies, they're launching a new product or service, or a speaker's launching, one of the first things you think is about the target market or the segment market that you're kind of going after. Now, you mentioned you specialize in CEO groups, and I know I probably speak to kind of similar groups, C-suite, VP kind of level. And I had an event recently where I'd gone from doing a whole bunch of C-suite kind of events, and then suddenly doing 2,000, as you mentioned, it was the ICC in Birmingham, same venue. And it was 2,000 frontline workers, for people on the front line in retail stores. And having a bit of a head like, oh, okay, this is a very different group. I'm going to have to change in language and things. So I'm interested from your perspective, why do you love speaking to CEO groups? Why do you specialize in CEO groups?
I specialize by mistake. I also do anyone who's involved in leadership. I don't often talk to frontline delivery staff. So I did a conference for Debenhams in the old days where anybody who managed more than 2 people, and there were like 5,000 of them, over a series of 10 weeks, I did them all. I really want to work with people who are in some sort of leadership role, because as you know, we lead people and we manage things. I like to help and support people who've got to lead some people to get the best out of them. So I love working with CEOs, leadership teams, where they're going to inspire other people. So when I've gone, they're going to take my message and share it to other people.
So really, what you talk about there is leverage. You've got leverage in your intellectual property and your knowledge. And
I did the Housekeepers Association of Great Britain. Okay, so I want you to visualize housekeepers of hotels. What comes to mind? I'll ask both of you. What comes to mind when I say the housekeepers of Great Britain?
Think of the 2 ladies that used to go around sorting out houses. You know, the one with the bun, and Aggie and I can't remember the other lady's name. Probably completely wrong image.
Oh dear. Yeah. Okay. The head of Gleneagles Housekeeping is wearing a Chanel suit, has 400 staff. Okay, and they all look better than the 3 of us. Trust me. Okay.
I'm sure they do.
No, but I had to quickly then think about they have to manage and lead a team. They've got to manage millions of pounds of equipment and purchasing, and lead hundreds and hundreds of part-time staff. And all of a sudden, you then have to change your framework as a speaker in what your delivery is. Because they're used to doing some motivational speech, reach your goals, yay, go for it, stand on your chairs, reach for the stars. They need practical advice that can make them even better, make their hotels even better, so there's less complaints. So any speaker out there has got to really think, when they share that message, what are they going to do with that information? I don't want to knock any other speakers, but there are a lot of speakers who've done something brilliant 20 years ago, 30 years ago, and it's great they've got a gold medal in the downslope skiing. It's brilliant. I'm not sure that's going to help my hotelier unless we can find a way of sharing real practical tips about the preparation, how they did what they did, how they chose their equipment. David Brailsford, the Olympic cycling coach, that 1% marginal gains. Yeah. But most speakers, it's about them. I tell them very easily, if you like me, that's a bonus. Mark me naught now and then remark me in 21 days' time, and take what I'm sharing and use this information. And if you don't like it, then I'll send you money back. Because I'm confident with the stuff that I'm sharing is going to make a difference to them, their families, their relationships, as against them liking me. Now, when you're working with a bureau, you want to make sure the bureau thinks you've done a great job. But what you really want is in 21 days or 42 days' time, the client says, we've implemented what Nigel said and we've seen a difference. So I don't really care, quote unquote, if they like me on the day. I care about they've made a difference in 21 and 42 days' time. Now, I can do that because I'm a speaker of nearly 25 years. and I'm not precious anymore. I used to be, because I wanted that glowing testimonial. I was speaker of the day. I was the best they've ever heard. Well, if I'm the best they've ever heard, they haven't heard many speakers. That's my new take on it.
Okay, so listen, that's as part of your business model. You told us that you've written books. How many books have you written, Nigel?
I've written 5 books. I had to think there. I've written 5 books, but 2 of them are my, what I call, it's a bit like my steak, my fillet steak that, you know, I often will offer clients as part of my fee, my package, 100 copies of my book. But I do it in a very clever way. So, Maria, pretend to book me for a speaking gig.
Okay, Nigel, are you available on such and such a date? What's your fee? Can we do the deal?
How many people will be in the audience?
100 people.
So my fee includes 23 copies of my book.
Why 23, Nigel? That's a weird number.
Because normally I'll stop talking and they'll say, yeah, but there's 100 of us. I said, well,
Yeah.
if you want a deal for the other 77, we can organise that. And if I can bring it on the day, we can do a special deal and we do a hotel drop if you want. But I do something else that's even cleverer than that. I book the follow-up in advance.
Yeah.
I know when I leave a client, they're going to want more. So I say to the client right at the very beginning, when I've finished, and you'll have had this, James, I'm sure, you've come off stage and the CEO says, we must have you back. To organise that is not easy. Because before you spoke, they love you. Now you've spoken, they've got other stuff to deal with. And I'll often say, I've already got the follow-up in the diary. Because if I wasn't any good, then we'll cancel it. So I book 25% of all of my clients have a follow-up in advance. We get as many of our clients to get books in advance or a book drop. And all of our books have knowledge they can implement immediately. And one of my books is a 2 toilet sitting book. They can finish the whole book in 2 toilet sittings and gain instant knowledge. Have you
I don't know what people do on the toilets, but I don't read in the toilets.
Yeah, but you're one of the exceptions. But have you ever seen the book 7 Habits of Highly Effective People?
Of course.
Have you ever finished it?
No.
Okay, no, so here's my point. So
I did on audio.
8 million people have got the book and about 3 people have finished it.
Yeah.
What I wanted to do was have the reverse. Make sure that people could read the book, finish the book and do something different. And so we wrote a book on communication in 4 styles. So the 4 different animals could read the book in their own style. And we've now got it translated around the world. We've got zookeepers around the world using it. And lots of companies use it in their induction process. So when they join the company, they read the book. And all of a sudden they go, now I understand why I find it difficult to talk to James, because he's talking in crypto language or some hyper different way of the world. And then Maria needs short, sharp facts. She doesn't want any messing about. She doesn't want to know how you are. She just wants to get information.
That's true. It's true.
Well, that's why I'm saying it. So if you understand personality styles, all of a sudden teamwork works. Then when you're communicating as a speaker, life is easier. So books are really key as a speaker. And the problem for most speakers, they think the books are the answer. Books are part of your speaking business. And most speakers should have a book now and in hardback. It's great having an ebook, but people like to physically touch a book. We sell thousands of books compared to our Kindle version. Even though all of our books are on Kindle, we sell many more hardbacks than Kindle, and they're half the price. I mean, it doesn't make sense, but people want to touch a book and they want to feel like they're taking a bit of you home.
True. It's true. Let me just quickly touch on some of these comments that we've got coming in before I hand back to James, because I'm sure you've got a great question to ask. So Ty is saying, what's a good way to introduce yourself to CEOs with limited face-to-face interaction? Is it a phone call? Is it LinkedIn? Or is it email?
Okay, so remember, a CEO has got about 17 minutes maximum of attention span. Okay, that's all you've got with Maria, 17 minutes. So you've got to
Less than that.
Yeah,
Less
well,
than
I can
that.
come on to that. When I'm with you, I've got 17 minutes of a phone call once we've connected. So I tell all my CEOs, I'm only going to need 17 minutes of your time. A headline that will tell them what difference you can make to their organization in the moment, because they live in what we call an expectation economy. They expect something now they can use. So share some fact that's going to make their business better. Get in, get out really quick, and no waffle. They cannot stand waffle. Don't start telling them how wonderful you are and how many awards you've got and you're a best-selling author and speaker. They don't care. It's all about them. Lions, it's all about them, isn't it, Marie? It's all about you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. There's a nice comment as well from Alistair Frost, who saw one of your talks online the other day. He said he brings a great energy to the stage. Love it. Given that there may be fewer live in-person events in future, I'd love to know how he thinks these in-person performances may change. Will these audiences be easier or harder to engage?
Okay, so this is a phenomenal question. My average speech is only 42 minutes. So, James, I don't know how long your speech is. My average speech is 42 minutes when I do a keynote. That's as long as people can stay in the room. I want it to be really clear. And I start with a bang. The middle bit's okay. And the end bit's phenomenal. Because you've got a very short time to engage people. And if you're on Zoom or WebEx or any of this, but go straight into it. None of this good morning. It's so lovely to be here. I really want to thank you, Maria, for inviting me onto the Speaking Business TV. It's lovely to be here. I haven't seen you for so long. But what I'd like to share 7 aspects of speaking business. People don't care. Just give them a fact that the average person spends 50% of their time not in the room. And we call it MPS, missing presumed selling. So, James, you'll know when you're speaking at an event, half the people are on their phones, either taking notes or playing Candy Crush. The problem is you just don't know which 50% it is. So I tell people, I'd like you to take notice, don't take notes. Any notes you need, I'll send you if you just email me. Now I'd like you in the room. And that's my opening line. I don't do business rapport. I just grab them and share information. So from the first second, you're giving them information. So you can do it on Zoom. You can do it on WebEx. I've seen speakers die on stage in a live audience with round tables, with the lights on, with everything you need, because they're not interactive in the first 5 seconds. The average person needs to be engaged. They need to be shocked with some statistic. So we just did a statistic that said 90% of the staff spend 90% of their time doing routine shite. Now, James, as a speaker, you went to Ukraine like I went, didn't you, James?
Yeah.
In a nutshell, tell me the day that you spent going to Ukraine and what your day looked like. So you got picked up at your house at what time?
On that flight, I actually flew in the day before the event, so I think I got picked up about 7 a.m. ish. I would imagine.
7 a.m. You got to Heathrow at like 9 o'clock.
No, actually, I don't live in London, so I actually went to Edinburgh and then get a flight to Heathrow and then Heathrow.
It's even worse. No, it's
even worse. Yeah.
You get picked up. You go to Scotland. You then get to Heathrow. Then you wait for and you probably did business, so you got a bit of a lounge somewhere, and then you get picked up by Ilona and her team. And then you have a dinner. Most of that first day, you didn't do very much. Would that be fair?
Yes. I filmed the whole thing because I can use that for content afterwards. But apart from that, just traveling.
Most of that day was not living your highest purpose and your highest vision. Most staff are not spending most of the time doing the stuff they love to do. I spend half my time traveling, waiting on a line, waiting to get on to do a YouTube, whatever it might be. If you then think about staff, 90% of staff are spending 90% of their time doing routine stuff so they can live their highest vision. When you share that to an audience and you realize how much money they're wasting by people not being effective, you grab people's attention. Does that make sense? So I will shock an audience with a statistic that is true, by the way. Don't give people stuff they can check online and find out is not true.
So
give them the source, I would say. Sorry, James, give them the
something
source.
You mentioned there, like I'm just thinking about that Ukraine day, and this is something I've noticed from going from virtual now, going back to in person. In person, I would use, let's say, if I'm using PowerPoint, I'm using probably one slide every 3 minutes, or in person before, pre-COVID, pre-pandemic. When doing virtual, I'm probably using one slide every 1.5 minutes. It's going a little bit faster. And then I experimented going to Ukraine. I thought, I'm going to be interested to see if people have kind of got used to everyone's living in TikTok land and doing that stuff, whether I need to keep that pace. So I actually experimented. I thought, actually, I'm going to go at pace level of when doing a virtual, which is much quicker. And in fact, the speaker that was on before me, who was from Belgium, I believe, he actually did a similar thing. And he was like, it was very fast. And then I saw a speaker who came on after us, who kind of went in the old way of doing it, where it was, I think it was maybe one slide every 5 minutes or thereabouts. And I was watching the audience and I was getting, oh, this is interesting. And I don't know what your take on this is, but I'm noticing this a lot also in things like music, for example, now, where musicians realize you have to pull people in that first 5 seconds, even on things like TikTok and a lot of apps now. Basically, you got 5 seconds. If you don't pull person, and so I'm seeing musicians do things like in that first 5 seconds, do something that's really like pulls you in, even though it has actually no relation to the rest of the song.
But
so
James, you're sounding shocked that this is 50 years old. People said, grab people, share some stories, and then leave them with something they can take with them that's a key. So the idea in the old days, you'd say, I'm going to tell you a story. Just tell them the story. Don't tell them what you're going to tell them. And then don't retell them. They got it. And then at the end.
But is that different though? Because you mentioned this, the keynote, you said the difference between keynote and training, they're different animals, they're different things.
I start both. I start exactly the same for training and keynotes to grab them. I've got longer to share in a training, some stuff to do. But in a keynote, 42 minutes, you better be on point. You don't have too many things to share.
So on your training, though, let's say it's 2.5 hours, you pull them in at the start, exactly like you would do as a keynote. You're kind of wanting to get that, I call it a cold open. You're kind of bring that person in. In that, at the stint of the training, would you actually say to them, this is where we're going, giving them a sense of the map of where they're going to go over the 2.5 hours?
I don't, which is what makes me a little bit different.
No, it's different. Yeah.
I'll have them crying within an hour.
Yeah.
And then I'll have them laughing within 2 hours and then back to where I started with. I'm known as someone who does open heart surgery without an anesthetic. I dig really deep, really quickly because I've got time to bring them back together. I don't have time in a keynote to dig deeper. So this is going to sound a little bit disrespectful, but you'll get this. I offer 3 speeches: Chinese, Indian, and Nigerian. Have you had Chinese food?
I'm intrigued to where we're going with
Okay. Have you had Chinese food, Maria?
Yes.
After about an hour, what normally happens?
I'm hungry again.
Yeah, there you go. So that's your classic keynote speech. You do your 42 minutes. Everyone says it's great. But in an hour's time, the next speaker comes on. You can do some more. Have you had Indian food, James?
Oh, yes. I love my Indian food.
Do you have it like every week?
No. Otherwise, I'd be 3 times the size.
Okay. But most people in England have a curry like once or twice every week or every 2 weeks. Mm-hmm. So Indian is where it's a bit deeper, as I call it, but it's still not really the massive stuff. Have you had Nigerian food?
No, actually, I've never had Nigerian food.
Okay, so I've been to Nigeria 3 times and it's still in my system. Okay.
It has more resonance.
What I'm saying is I offer my clients a choice. I say, I can do the Michael McIntyre stuff. I can do that 40-minute burst, but most people are going to want more of it within a week or a month. The Indian stuff, you've got to be a bit more trusted to be able to dig deeper. A Nigerian is where you really go deep. So I was in Nigeria just before lockdown. I mean, it was a heavy session with 3 YPO groups, and we had lots of tears. We had lots of emotion. There was dancing, but lots of big stuff came out. You can't do that in 42 minutes. I've done firewalks with some of my teams. You can't do that in 42 minutes. So you've got to think about how you use your audience and where your speciality is. I like slightly longer than 42 minutes. The problem is, if you think about the conference world, you're not going to be given more than that the first time you speak because you're not a trusted advisor yet. So I've done Ukraine, I said 8 times. So I now have done 40 minutes. I now do a whole day with the whole team. But you're not going to get the chance to do a whole day unless they trust you. So you've got to look at where your speaking business is and say, what's my biggest speciality? It took me longer to become a keynote speaker than it did to become a trainer. So I'm a professional speaker who has written books, who coaches, who also does speeches. So it's slightly bizarre. Most speakers think they can do it all. It's very, very hard to be able to move your material and be fresh. And one of the questions we spoke about before is, how do you keep your business and your speaking career fresh? Because I've been doing it. I've had some audience have heard me speak 20 times.
So tell me, you've had 27 years in this business.
Oh, 25 this year.
25 years in this business. And topics have become, some topics have been fashionable, some kind of go out of fashion, some of those kind of evergreen ones. What have you done? How have you kind of stayed with a central topic and just kind of adjusted a little bit of the tonal side based upon what's relevant at that point? Or have you, every 5 years, like writing a new book, you kind of go into a slightly new topic? What's been your strategy?
Okay, so I started off with something called the 10 steps to success. The problem is I forgot some of them. So I then changed it to the 4 steps to success because I could always remember 4 and then give them some extra steps. Then I wrote a book called The Impact Code. And so it was how to create impact in the workplace. Then I went to how to create massive impact as a CEO. How to create impact as a leader is my big topic. But I could change the letter C of impact from comic relief to communication. Then I went to how to create massive impact as a zookeeper. And so zookeeper to me is the analogy of leading your team, knowing you've got different animals in your company. Now we've gone one stage further, that we brought the zookeeper principles for the office, where we've added new animals. We've added, you're like this, Maria. So some people like you will go from what I call this friendly lion that works in a pride to a tiger, where you just eat your own if you don't get yourself sorted out. I, as a monkey, can be really funny. And if I get pissy, I can turn into a hyena, and I'm not fun then. As an elephant, James, you might go what I call a little bit rhino, where you'll go solitary, go into your little den, and then charge with documentation, and then upset some people. So what happens in the workplace is that when your workplace is at best, you need to manage the zoo. But what happens when you get disruptive animals? What happens when you've now had COVID, where you've got people who are not working in their normal environment, where you've had people working on their own? For someone like me, I've loved being on my own, which is strange as a monkey, because I like other people, but I've quite enjoyed my own space. But there are some people right now who are missing their colleagues desperately. And the CEO has now said, we're all coming back into the office. Half the team are going, why? We've made more money not being in the office, not traveling, spending an extra 3 hours at home. Why are we doing it? So we've adapted new working relationships for principles of working and best practice in the workplace. So I've changed my speech probably 7 times over the last 25 years. But there's still
That's good to hear.
But there's still some core principles, Maria. People, my biggest message is, if you're in the room, be in the room. That's still the same message for 25 years. You need to be present. You need to be here. You need to communicate like a zookeeper. You need to be passionate. So some of my core principles are lifelong principles. They're never going to change. But what you've got to do is to adapt where communication is, how communication is, how you send messages. And books are just the take home for people. It's about they get a chance to take a little piece of your heart home with them.
Super. We're going to ask you one final question, Nigel, then we're going to let you go. You mentioned previously that speakers are more concerned with testimonials, and that testimonials, you've taken them to Waitrose and they don't pay. And you're thinking they should be more concerned with rebookings. Tell me a little bit more about that.
So when I look at most speakers, and I've done coaching of speakers, I used to run a speakers boot camp. And my opening line, and you'll appreciate this, there's only 2 ways to be a great keynote speaker. One is to have a phenomenal 42-minute speech. And the second is to be phenomenal at marketing. Because unless you can market yourself and put yourself out there and ask for business, you're not going to get it. And the other is to be phenomenal in that 42 minutes. If you're not being rebooked and you're not getting recommendations, then you're not that good. Because the world is such that when I do a speech, the only thing I'm interested in is the LinkedIn comments or Facebook, etc., about what people have said about me. And I'm not the nicest speaker. I'm not like James, who's polite, well dressed. He follows the system. I'm a bit of a, I was going to say bully. That's the wrong word. I'm in
Maverick.
Yeah, but I'm a bit in people's faces. I'm challenging people within 5 seconds. Do something different. And if you want to know why your business sucks, it's because you suck. That's one of my best lines. So you're not going to get rebooked on personality. What you are going to do is get rebooked on results. So be results orientated more than applause orientated. Getting a standing ovation does not pay your mortgage. Being rebooked will. So being rememberable, being requotable, being, all that stuff is great. What you want to do is look at your rebooking rates. And without blowing smoke up my own arse, my rebooking rate is one of the highest in the UK. And I know it because I see where my work comes from. I don't have to be doing hundreds and hundreds of new speeches because I know what my rebooking rate is.
Brilliant, brilliant, brilliant. So, James, how can we get in touch with Nigel? Do you have anything can you
Well,
sum up for us?
We are going to have, if people go to speakingbusiness.tv, enter your details there, there's links that we're going to have for Nigel. I know, Nigel, before we came on, you mentioned that if you'll go to your website, nigelrisner.com, you have you mentioned about the animal side. I'm sure we didn't kind of get fully into that. And so people, I'm sure, going to be interested in your little kind of personality type. Tell us about that.
There's a quiz online within literally 1 minute to find out which animal you are. And if you really want further information, there's books and there's a personality assessment tool and quiz, which you can then invest in if you want. But within literally a minute, and we don't ask for any names and addresses because we don't want to be capturing and mining detail and then sending you spam for the next 20 years. We don't do that. There's a quiz, do the quiz, find out which animal you are, get your family to do it, get your colleagues to do it. It's a lot of fun, but it's unbelievably true.
Fantastic.
Brilliant.
We'll put that link there. So people go to nigelrisner.com or you go to speakingbusiness.tv and there's links there for this episode as well as all the resources for the previous episodes as well. Nigel, thank you so much for coming on today, sharing all that wonderful knowledge. The bit about the debrief calls afterwards, I think that's a crack. I mean, we're going to have to bring you back on the show to talk about that.
Whenever you want, make it 2023, new information, new material.
Rebooking.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Nigel.
That's what you're looking for, to be invited back. That's all people get. That's all I care about. Thank you so much for trusting me.
Fantastic, Nigel.
You're very welcome. You're very welcome. Oh, look, I'm big. Let me make myself the same size again.
Good.
James, wow. Listen, I had to take notes on this one because, we like to do a little wrap up and a review and I literally have an entire page of notes. So shall I go first as to some of the points that I pulled out from there?
On this.
I love the fact that Nigel says to people, if your business sucks, you suck. It's my kind of feedback. So what I love is this instant nowness, this new knowledge, something that audiences can use. That for me is absolutely, when I was a booker, that was so important for me. And I love the fact, because Nigel is so right when he said that I heard SMART goal setting so many times. People who are around speakers all the time, they hear the same thing over and over and over again. So I like people who have their own models. So to make it smarter so that it's enjoyable and rewarding was great. I've got lots more, but I'll hand over to you because I don't want to. So I liked that a lot.
Yeah, the thing I was thinking about, which is maybe part of the reason, another part of the reason that he gets rebooked, is I call a debrief call. I'm not sure what Nigel would call it and what you call it, Maria. But that call that you'll have with a client, which you set up in advance, maybe a week, 2 weeks after the event. And I find those incredibly powerful. Not always necessarily that, as you know, I do case studies after each client. So this is a good opportunity to present them with a case study. What do you think? Are you happy? Is there a testimonial? Because I will ask for a testimonial. And then we kind of put that out more publicly. But the other thing, and this is where, there's that line. I'm not going to say who said it because I'm not a fan of him, but he said, if you go up and send the lift back down. So this is the bit where you get to have a conversation with a client and genuinely and honestly, you ask them, what is your theme for your next event? And if they say, well, actually, our theme for our next thing is we're really thinking about LinkedIn, or we need someone talking about LinkedIn training. Got the perfect person, Jane Anderson. Let me connect you with Jane. This is where you can pass on, because for me, certainly as a keynote speaker, I'm not going to get booked for that conference the next year or maybe even the year after. So for me, it's about how I can add more value to that person. And if we all do that, if we all kind of support each other, then hopefully the good stuff rises to the top. So that's just kind of, I've been thinking a little bit about the kind of debrief call that he was talking about.
Super. And I completely agree with Nigel in terms that the keynote and the training are totally different, and that the keynote has to have that, and I like the fact that he talks about 42 minutes, because most of the time it used to be a 45 minutes for us when we were booking keynotes. So the fact that you've got 42 minutes, it allows time for somebody to actually introduce you, which most people don't think about. The introduction, there's never time on the agenda for the introduction. You need to include that in your speech time, right? And I don't like it. There has been in the past a US tradition of having like 90-minute keynotes. I agree that that's too long. I think 45 minutes you want to get across one or two really strong points.
The backside, after like 45 minutes, the backside, I don't know about you, backside's a bit sore. I need to move, whether it's virtual or in person. I need to get up. I need to go and have the coffee break at that point, 45 minutes.
Yeah. And so for me, that one of the other thing that struck me, so Nigel saying rebooking rather than testimonials. Absolutely. However, there is a great place for testimonials, but not the testimonial that says you're a brilliant speaker. The brilliant speaker piece, gosh, I said a wrong word there. The brilliant speaker piece is actually a minimum requirement. You have to be a brilliant speaker, right?
Yeah.
The testimonial should be talking about what Nigel's been talking about. What was the outcome? What was the outcome of you coming to speak? Then it has value. Then it has real value, because then I can use it, or I could use it as a booker, and other bookers see, actually, that's the result I want.
Yeah.
And they expect a brilliant speaker.
And that's the thing that I think bigger consulting firms have over individual speakers, is because they have a very formalized process for then going and doing check-ins 6 months later, 1 year later, and actually putting a dollars and cents amount to how much value they've added. And then from their perspective, they can then calculate, okay, we want to be able to capture as a consulting firm 10% of that additional value we can give you. So that allows them to increase their pricing. So one of the things I was always told right there early when thinking about my pricing is like, well, on average, how much value are you adding to that organization? How much of their revenue is going to increase, or how much do you think they could potentially reduce their costs if they applied what you said to them? And then think, what percentage of that do you want to try and capture?
Lovely. Brilliant. Well, James, it's been another fantastic show. That went so fast. We actually managed to get words in edgeways, because I know that Nigel has so much content, and people were teasing us when we said we had him on. You won't get to ask a question. It'll be the Nigel show. It was the Nigel show, and I loved it. So goodbye to you, and goodbye from me.
And goodbye from me.
Fantastic. Wonderful. Keep going, because I can't find my video. Oh, okay.
Take care, everyone. Yes. Have a great day. Bye-bye.